Thought you already knew everything about FNAF? Get ready, because the second one is here to break everything. The Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie goes beyond what you saw in the first one. Get ready for revelations that will change everything about the FNAF universe. Did you know that the FNAF 2 movie brings a series of hidden details that could completely alter what we thought about the plot? Let's be realistic. The first Five Nights at Freddy's movie was a real treat, but only for the hardcore fans of the franchise. For those who weren't familiar with the games or didn't dive into the lore, the movie felt more like a forced attempt to make something scary with a somewhat disjointed story. The horror? Weak? The suspense? Almost non-existent. The first movie failed to balance what the fanbase loved with a product that would actually work for a larger audience. Now, FNAF 2 comes with a promise. It understands that the movie will always be a cheap horror movie, and maybe even a little cheesy, but it embraces that. Instead of trying to be a horror Oscar, it surrenders to what really matters to the fans: fun. The second movie doesn't have to worry about being perfect, and that, my friends, is an advantage. It will focus on more tension, more animatronics, and of course, more immersion. Let's face it, folks, the FNAF story is a complete mess. Bringing that to the big screen is extremely difficult. So what's the best approach, if not to embrace the cheesiness and make us leave the theater with a smile on our faces? So charge your flashlights and subscribe to the channel, because today we're going to talk about everything you need to know to get hyped for the second Five Nights at Freddy's movie here on Zigzag. Adapting Five Nights at Freddy's to the big screen is a real nightmare, and not in a good way. Wait, is there a good way? Anyway, while the games follow a more free-flowing structure, like literally, the story was written on the fly for each game. In cinema, something more organized is required, with a clear beginning, middle, and end. You can't just throw the story elements in the air and expect everything to make sense. A movie has a time and space limit to tell its story, and that means cutting, reorganizing, and even transforming parts of the FNAF puzzle into something more cohesive. In other words, what works great in a mystery and horror game doesn't work very well when you need to fit everything into a 2-hour movie. Now, if they tried to be 100% faithful to the games, well, it would be like trying to make a cake without a recipe, but still expecting it to come out exactly like the one on TV. The game mixes events out of order, clues that change from game to game, and even characters that appear and disappear randomly. Try fitting that into a movie, and it would be like putting a pizza in a pressure cooker and expecting fried chicken to come out. It's impossible! In cinema, the audience won't understand if the killer from Chapter 1 becomes a hero by the end of the movie, just because fan feedback changed the story in the sequel. The chaos of FNAF might be fun in the games, but in the movie, the mess needs to be calculated, or no one will understand anything. Do you also think the FNAF story is confusing? And speaking of not understanding anything, in the game Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the story takes place in the late 80s, bringing to life one of the biggest mysteries of the franchise, the famous Bite of 87. This event becomes one of the pillars of the narrative, but in the first movie, it wasn't even mentioned. Additionally, the movie follows the current timeline, with events happening in modern times. This creates a gap between what happens in the games and what we see on screen, making it impossible to strictly follow the chronology of the games without causing confusion for the audience. Trying to fit FNAF 2 directly into the movie's timeline would be like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It simply doesn't work. That's why it's time for the movie to stop trying to follow the rigid rules of the game and embrace a freer approach. The movie can't be a hostage to the events and dates of FNAF 2, so a new interpretation is necessary. Instead of trying to force everything to fit, the FNAF 2 movie needs to create its own timeline, something that makes sense within the cinematic structure and still keeps the essence of the game, but without getting lost in technical details that are nearly impossible to replicate. If the FNAF movie timeline confused you too, subscribe to the channel now and don't miss a thing. We'll unravel each change and how this will impact the story we all love. But man, honestly, I think they're going to try to do some things similar to the game. You know, the Bite of 87 is famous precisely because of Foxy's all-destroyed animatronic, which is known in the game lore as Mangle, which is basically this Foxy here, all messed up. looking like a 30-something who's tired of working on a Sunday night. No, I'm not projecting myself onto the doll. Shut up. But anyway, we can see in some scenes that Mangle is in the FNAF 2 movie. There's this short scene of it waking up, and then this scene of it breaking the window, and also this even shorter scene of someone being pulled to the ceiling. I think that even though it's a totally different timeline, they'll still recreate certain canonical events from each game, according to its title, you know? Imagine how cool it would be if the FNAF 3 movie takes place in an abandoned horror park, because that's what happens in the third game, right? But man, there's something in this movie trailer that's already tilting me. You know what I hate the most in horror movies? Idiotic kids who just mess everything up. And guess who's here to become the one to blame for everything in the second Five Nights at Freddy's movie? Abby, Mike's sister. From this scene here, we see that she left a note saying, "Went to fix my friends," and the rest of the trailer is all about the animatronics causing havoc in the city. Wow, I wonder what happened, huh? Seriously, girl? After everything that happened in the first movie, the best idea she had was to go there and start playing with the mechanical devil creatures. The lesson here is very clear. Leave the animatronics possessed by vengeful spirits of children roasted by a serial killer alone. It's because of people like Abby that the egg carton says contains eggs. But since we're on the subject, what about the serial killer? The biggest problem with this movie, in my view, is what they're going to do with the big villain of the FNAF saga. In the first movie, he's abandoned in the restaurant's secret room inside the Spring Bonnie suit, meaning he has already become the creepy zombie Springtrap. But here's the thing. The biggest mystery of FNAF wasn't just his identity, but also the motivation and order of all his crimes. And in the first movie, they practically revealed the entire game. In the games, we have the events of the children's disappearances and then the children's massacre. This second one is what relates to the lore of the second game. But in the movie, we know that he kidnapped those people who appear in Mike's dream. So probably the second mystery should come to light in this movie. But are they going to reveal his motivation and say that it was Vanessa who shoved the crying child into the animatronic's mouth? Is William Afton's mystery going to keep surprising us? Or are they going to push it too far? Comment below with the hashtag Afton and tell me what you think will happen to him in the second movie. In the games, the concept of 5 nights was genius, with each one bringing new difficulties and challenges that increased the tension. In the movie, it's going to be hard to maintain that. How do you turn the idea of the nights into something continuous and exciting without losing the rhythm of the narrative? At the end of the day, the movie is going to have to reinvent itself to avoid falling into the trap of being a boring repetition of the same tensions, something that worked much more creatively in the games. The truth is that the structure of the 5 nights made the games incredible, but in cinema, where everything needs to flow, it's more complicated. The first 3 games were the 5 nights of the work week, but the 4th game is a countdown to Cece's birthday party. It makes sense, right? There's no way they can do 5 nights of animatronics loose in the city, or is there? The movie is going to have to be very creative to adapt this without losing the essence and impact that the fans expect. Now tell me, does your hype survive 5 nights? Or does it get eaten before the deadline?